Financial management is just pretty much emotional management. Those who are very disciplined wind up with a lot of money. The frugal controls the frivolous. So if you're just out there on a whim, doing whatever you want with your money, you will not be a person that will be successful with wealth or be successful in business, because that instrument called money came from something. There was an input in something. There was, whether it was labor, investment, knowledge, something you put in, and then you're rewarded with money. And a lot of people's emotions are used in business rather than using logic and intelligence. Welcome everybody to another episode of Classes in Session, brought to you by Black and in Business Media, sponsored by Urban Business Lending Group, where you can get your funds for your business, for your idea, whether you're in business or you want to start a business. Go to urbanbusinesslendinggroup.com. I'm your host, Professor Devin Robinson. We're going to continue with our Relationship in Business series. Today we're going to be talking about stage 3 in the business journey, which is employees. But before I get into that, I want you guys to shoot on over to blackandinbusiness.com. We got some good reading there, and if you don't know, let me just tell you, this is going to be the biggest and most effective platform for Black entrepreneurs. If you want to get to the next level in your business, business ownership, investments, entrepreneurship ideas, and what's not, this would be the best source for you. Seeing that we talk about specifically the meat and potatoes, not the fluff, not in theory, not just the textbook, but getting into real experiences and real things that you can do and should do to launch your business. So over at blackandinbusiness.com, you'll see tons of articles. One, our featured article for the week, business of the week, is the laundry room, owned with it's in Prince George's County, which we know is the wealthiest county in the country, Prince George's County, Maryland, and it's owned by Christian Sanya. She started the business and is now being said to be grossing almost $30,000 a month already. Now, I want you guys to understand what that means, right? Because we'll gravitate to that. Almost 30,000 is roughly about 24,000, and we're like, oh, that's great. But let me explain something to you. There's investments that have to go into that. So what did it take for her to get the money put in? What did it take for the business to get started? The licenses, the certifications, if there's any, the construction costs, the carrying costs of the finances. Did she save it up? Did she mortgage a house? Did she sell another business or property, or got a business loan? There's a lot of things that have to go in to a business before you start pumping out that 24,000. Now, experts are often very irresponsible in just giving you the glorified side of business. I, for one, don't do that. My history in business stretches back 20 years, and even a little bit more before that as a kid. If any of you have read my book, Power Move: How to Transition from Employee to Employer, it's a real transition. And just that journey of, the pitfalls, the bumps, the bruises, that kind of stuff to take you to the next level. So shoot on over to blackandinbusiness.com. You'll find the article on the laundry room. And you'll also find our featured article. We also have employees and employers are antonyms. So we're going to talk about that today. And if you don't know what an antonym is, that means you skip English class. You were not paying attention in school. There's synonyms, antonyms, homonyms. Anyway, for those of you that get my drift, you will understand what that means. They're opposites, right? The perspectives are opposite. So we're going to really dig into that as well here on today's episode. When we're talking about the stage 3 of business, so I teach a lot about business, and business is one of the, it's a gift and a curse. So the good thing about business is you don't necessarily need a certification to say you're going to start a business. Only maybe a particular type of business. Obviously, you can't start a medical practice without certain education degrees or certification, stuff like that. But to just be in business generally, like anyone, if they got the money, the grit, the idea, the resources, they can start a business. That's the gift. The curse is anyone can start a business. That's also the curse, because then what you find is there are people that they got such passion. They're so adamant about this business and neurotic, and they got this feeling for this craft, and they just want to start this business, and they throw caution to the wind and they jump into a business, and many times it fails. So what we're going to talk about a little bit more deeper into the show about what causes businesses to fail. You know, what are some of the areas that you can focus in on to succeed, but particularly we're talking today about the employee relationship. So the stages of business is 1, entrepreneurship; 2, business ownership; 3, employership or employerhood or whatever you want to call it; and 4 is executive level. So what does this all mean? So stage 1, entrepreneurship, is just the individual, right? So we're talking about focusing in on how that person behaves, their ideas, how you're able to see ideas, or like they say, you can find opportunities out of problems instead of finding problems out of opportunities. That's just to sum up what an entrepreneur is. You're able to see things, take it, solve a problem, turn it into an economic gain. Stage 2 now is the business itself. So that means you starting a business and that relationship between you, the individual, and the actual business. How does that work, and how do you really set it up? Believe it or not, that transition from stage 1 to stage 2 is often a very, very difficult transition for some people, because the entrepreneur can stay in this mode of the hustler, right? Going from thing to thing, idea to idea. There's 1 or 2 or 10 in every family. If you don't see them in the family, then it's you. That they're hustlers, right? They know how to go out and make money, but they don't know how to build like an infrastructure, right? And then you go to business ownership. So you own something, you have the infrastructure, it's running, it's working. And then stage 3 is when you now become an employer. Now, the most difficult transition is from stage 2 to stage 3, going from the business ownership to the employer, because the vast majority of businesses in America, well over 90%, I think it's something like 92, 93% of businesses are owner operated. So you got the infrastructure, right? So you got people like, they may be like technicians, HVAC, landscaping, you know, they're like the do-it-yourselfers. They're the owner operators. They may own a food truck, that kind of stuff, and they're doing all the work. So they have the business, it's organized, it's structured, but then they have a hard time bringing employees in. Now let me tell you some truths about when it comes to employees. Employees are a significant resource, 1. Some businesses really rely on them. Can't function without employees. Most businesses fail due to them. Businesses take a hit when employees fail the customer. So it's not necessarily, and I'll get into that in a second, but it's not necessarily that the employee gets to make these mistakes and they don't pay for it, right? When customers go out and do reviews, they do a review on the actual company. So let's just say you had a bad employee or a bad batch of employees or whatever during that time, that can really hit your business. I say all the time, any business that you see grow to a multi-million-dollar business, generational business, you got to tip your hat and show some respect to that business, because it is a real process in that transition. And a lot of businesses fail not because of money or capital, and sometimes it's due to ignorance. Like a lot of times The number one cause of failure is ignorance from the owner operator. They don't know what to do in the event of problems may arise. They don't know what to do. The number two cause of business failure is pride. They don't know what to do, and they don't reach out to the appropriate people or seek help to the appropriate people. Because if you have a circle, and we spoke about that in the friends and family episode, if you have a circle of people and they all like you, and you came up not being an entrepreneur and you transitioned to entrepreneurship and you never changed that circle, you can't be going to them for advice because they don't understand that. So you don't know what to do. You have pride. You don't reach out to the appropriate parties to figure out what to do. And number three is emotions. Your emotions can cause you a lot of heartache in business because money is not emotional. Like, money responds to what you did, to what happens, period. You know, I tell people in financial management is just pretty much emotional management. Those who are very disciplined wind up with a lot of money. The frugal controls the frivolous. So if you're just out there on a whim, doing whatever you want with your money, you will not be a person that will be successful with wealth or be successful in business, because that instrument called money came from something. There was an input in something. There was, whether it was labor, investment, knowledge, something you put in, and then you're rewarded with money. And a lot of people's emotions are used in business rather than using logic and intelligence. Businesses go public. I'm moving on my list. Businesses go public when employees excel. You see those businesses that grow and grow and grow. Now, let me talk to you for a second, my people. This isn't like we often ignore certain important things about business when it comes to black people. It is not the same. It is not the same. What Mark Zuckerberg was able to do with Facebook, what Bill Gates was able to do with Microsoft, what Jeff Bezos was able to do with Amazon, these businesses also made it to the levels they are due to race. Race is a factor when it comes to our business. Now, I'm not saying that they made it because of just their skin color. They also made it because of the culture. So black entrepreneurship isn't just about, we're not like having a harder time just because of our skin color. Skin color is a part of it, but because of also our cultural dynamics, right? How we deal with each other as customers, how we deal with each other as employees, you know, how we deal with each other in friends and family. How do we deal with each other when we see someone about to ascend? You know, they talk about one of the most dangerous career paths now is being a rapper, largely because those individuals are finding success out of a group of people that were down on their luck. So now they're moving to a higher level, and largely the detriment to them is not changing their environment, as I say, levels and circles, and people of that environment, part of our culture, they upset, right? And you find poverty, you can also find resentment, bitterness, anger, especially when wealth is being flaunted in the face of people in poverty. So what they were able to do going public and all that is it has some other factors to it. And we can do the same. However, we just have to master and understand that black entrepreneurship exists so that we can master those things and go to the next level. So you would have people telling you all day. You got some experts, some black experts. They're experts that happen to be black, but they're not black experts because they're not talking about the real ideals about black culture and black entrepreneurship. Would almost like encourage you and tell you that, hey, all you got to do is this and you're going to be successful. That's not how it really works. And then the last thing, employees are given the benefit of the doubt in politics and in the community. So that is a major thing as well, because what does that mean? So if you really look at the laws and stuff, right? We have consumer protection laws and we have labor laws. We have a whole Department of Labor that protects the employees, right? You have Department of Commerce, but there are no laws specifically for employers. What do I mean by that? So, like, if an employee steals from work, that's a normal crime. Like, you got to take that to, it's almost like if an employee steals from work and a customer steals from your business, it's the same crime, right? There's no specific crime that protects employers. If someone lies on their resume, if someone steals hours that they shouldn't get on the time clock, those kind of things, there's no real protection for employers, meaning specific crimes. Like we have hate crimes, right? For specific things, we don't have those things on the books, which should be for businesses. Why? Because here's the other downside. Business owners, entrepreneurs are a much smaller voting block than employees. So if anything sounds remotely close to holding employees accountable, that politician that may be proposing that is almost like political suicide. So they won't be able to pass those types of laws that are needed to protect business owners. We got the EEOC, you know, the employer can't discriminate against, but you got employees that not just discriminate, but would do poor reviews or lie on businesses. Like I said, steal. If an employee steal from a company, that should be a special prosecution, because that's an inside job. You know what I'm saying? It's like what they have with the SEC for insider trading. That's an inside job. So a customer coming to steal from a company, they may not know the ins and outs of, you know, stealing from that person. A lot of the times it's shoplifting, they're hiding, or it's a robbery, right? But employees can commit crimes like embezzlement. They know how to manipulate systems, and then it's like normal crimes, and very rarely can that business get restitution. So there's like these things that affect companies in a way that that businesses are just not protected. So now then we have black businesses, right? So now with the black business part, you ask me, I have a whole set of codes and stuff that will be brought to politicians as we continue to grow our platform, and you know, we continue to grow the amount of businesses that we've started. And if you don't know much about like my history with starting businesses, to date, I've opened over 200 beauty supply stores. I'm also the founder of Beauty Supply Institute. You go to beautysupplyinstitute.com, because I own a store since 2005, and I saw the troubles and the struggles in that industry and decided to help other people get in and avoid the mistakes that I made or the challenges that I faced, giving them the answers to problems before they arise, right? So I have a lot of experience with the brick and mortar, the commercial space, managing taxes, managing workers, managing employee benefits, health benefits, all these different things. So bringing classes in session to the market is almost like you just having a discussion with an expert for real, not someone who just went to college and got the degrees on business, which I also did. But there's some stuff on the ground, boots on the ground stuff, that's all often missing from the conversation, because many people don't have it to give it. You can't give what you don't have, right? So there's a set of things that I'm bringing to government officials, and I'll just name like one of them. One of the issues is minimum wage. So minimum wage for black businesses is the same as large corporations, right? They should not be the same. The federal minimum wage should not be the same for a small business, much less a black business, as a corporation. So if the minimum wage for a Home Depot is $15 an hour, and you got a small business that's trying to start a hardware store themselves, and they're paying $15 an hour, one location, then you're talking about black businesses, people who ancestrally were owed trillions of dollars from reparations, and we're still being asked to pay the same sales tax rate, the same employee taxes, the same corporate taxes. We haven't gotten our just due yet, like Japan got and the Native Americans got. Somebody protect me. You know, this conversation, the type of stuff I'm talking about will require protection, right? My black people out there, we need protection to make sure that this conversation can continue going in the way it needs to go. But back to what I was saying, for black businesses, there are many disadvantages. So I'm not just talking about, like I said, skin color. There's cultural stuff. There's historical stuff. There's discrimination that happens. There's a lot of things that happens that slows us down, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. The reason for Black and in Business Media is to help you move past these different obstacles. And if you want more details, like real substantive, even deeper than I can go here on this length of a conversation and a podcast, and you want to talk back, and of course you can enter comments, but send in questions to us. But to even get deeper than that, I have a business school called Urban Business Institute. You can go to urbanbusinessinstitute.com. We do training for black entrepreneurs, and we actually have programs for the 4 different stages I talk about. So I just finished getting through stage 3. So we went from stage 2, business ownership, to stage 3, employer, which I said a lot of employers never get to that stage. They remain owner operated, because bringing in employees with the vision and getting the productivity and all of that out of the conversation is very, 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 very difficult to really get done in your workplace. And then stage 4 is the executive level. So the executive level is basically you now really being a CEO, where you're not just hiring staff, you're able to hire other leaders. So you can hire other leaders. Those other leaders now run departments. You can build out those departments. Those departments already should have been built out at stage 3. They're built out, and now you're really functioning from an executive level. And that's how businesses really start to grow, morph, become public, generational, expand, multiple locations, and do really well when you get to the stage 4. So if you got managers of departments and departments, that's when it really happens. But the magic starts when you have a Bible in your business. I'll tell you right now, the vast majority of businesses do not have Bibles. What's a Bible? An operations manual. Those things must also be created, because you need to have, it kills ambiguity. So you need to have this document in place where your employees can refer to. They know how their vacation time accrues. They know how they get promotions. You have a matrix showing these are the things you got to do to get promoted. These are the things you got to do to get a raise. These are the things you got to do to put in for vacation time. These are the things to do in the event of. These are all your rules. So many businesses, black businesses, do not have a Bible, an operations manual. So I want to paint this picture for you. Let's just say there's a watering hole, right? You all know what a watering hole is, like a pond or whatever, in the desert, right? So the desert it's dry, it's arid, there's often famines, different seasons. And then you have this watering hole in the middle of the desert, right? So let's look at this watering hole as it's owned by you, the CEO. And this watering hole creates life, right? Now you have people that come to this, not people, the animals, I'm trying to use the analogy. The animals come from different pods, different prides, different clusters of the desert to come to this watering hole for nourishment. So you got the lions are coming, you got the gazelles are coming, the gators usually hang around there, the hyenas are kind of lagging back, you got the wild dogs, you even got the insects, the bacteria. They're all coming, and they come there to get the nourishment, and then they leave and go back to their pod. That is the same thing as your business. Let's look at your business as the watering hole. You're going to have a bunch of people that comes from their different walks of life to the watering hole to get their nourishment. Now, you own the watering hole, and you know that you got to put certain rules in place for this watering hole to make sure that any one of the animals that are coming there do not take advantage of the watering hole, right? Now, you say, gators, you can eat one gazelle per week. Your family can have one per week. That allows you to survive, okay? Lions, you can only drink a gallon of water from this watering hole per day. And you have these rules in place because you're saying if there are no rules, this watering hole will not be able to support the ecosystem. It's gonna the business won't be able to support it if anyone does not abide by these rules. They're all coming. They don't know each other. They don't really care about each other outside of that because they have their own focuses. So the lions have their own cubs. They have the things that they got to do over there, and all they care is about the water that they can get. Gazelles the same way. The lions have to leave the cubs behind. They bring them to the watering hole. That could be dangerous. Or when they bring them, they got to bring them at a certain time so the gators don't grab them. All these different ideas you have to think about when it comes to them managing their own personal life, right? So, but you're the owner of the watering hole, and look, if you guys don't follow these rules, it's going to fall apart. The whole thing's going to fall apart. So then you got to create the operations manual to say, look, follow these rules. If you follow these rules, we can grow. The watering hole could become more abundant, and everyone can do well, go back home, enjoy their weekends, their family life, and everything. But then think about the gators that are like, nah, I don't want to just eat one gazelle. We're going to eat 5. So then they decide to eat 5. So now the gazelle count is down. And the vultures now can't get these gazelles because they were often eating off the old gazelles or the injured gazelles. And now the vultures, their life is in danger just because the gators decided to overconsume on the gazelles. Now the lions also don't have many. They also at risk as well because the gators took too many gazelles. So now the lions got a problem. So now the lions are like, man, to hell with this watering hole. We're going to go somewhere else. But you know what? Where we live is great. We love where we live. But now we got to find another watering hole because some of these gazelles, like, we're not seeing many gazelles. And that's what we need to bring back to our cubs. So now the lions got to go a further distance. You know what that means? Going that further distance, it's further away. So now because they're further away, they have to leave their cubs at home for a longer period of time. So now the cubs are at risk because the lions got to go a further distance, and now the wild dogs got a hold of the cubs because the lions are too far away. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm basically trying to explain how if those rules are not followed in the business, your business can fall apart. Now, I'll tell you, in many cases, it's the owner of the watering hole that never put the rules in place. They didn't come up with the operations manual. So no one knew what to do. It turned into the OK Corral. So they're just wild westing this watering hole, and the whole thing falls apart. So now the owner of the watering hole, the CEO of the watering hole, is upset, stressed because the whole thing failed. But that would typically happen around stage 1, stage 2. It would happen very early. If you don't have the rules and stuff in place, you're going to struggle very quickly, and the watering hole will just evaporate. So you really have to understand that if everyone does not follow the procedures, the rules, and understand that you should not steal from the business, you should not be late coming to the business. You should not look at the watering hole as a resource just for your family. If you don't understand that, that watering hole will fall apart. Here's the thing. Many of the animals don't care. Many of the animals or slash the workers don't care. They come and get all they can from it. And if it falls apart, their mindset is, I'll just go somewhere else. But you as the owner are stuck with it. You're stuck now with this piece of land that is no good because there's no watering hole. So it's dry, it's useless, and your whole thing fell apart. So this is the balancing act that you have, right? But if it's balanced properly, the watering hole will thrive. It'll grow. It'll be able to sustain the droughts. It'll be able to sustain some of the lean times. But if you don't manage it properly, it's really going to be a problem. So there was this article that I want to discuss. All right, so there's this article that came out in Fortune magazine, fortune.com, that I found was interesting when it comes to employees. The title of it is American Worker Productivity is Declining at the Fastest Rate in 75 Years. And it could see CEOs going to war against WFH. Now, here's the thing. What they're talking about, I think, is back to 1948, 75 years. And this article really breaks down what has happened in recent years when it comes to the worker. So, and I experience it, and I really talk about it. The pandemic for one, technology for one, and if you understand, like, when it comes to the economy and like the GDP, the gross domestic product in the nation, it measures the output of a nation, how much input versus output, and some other calculations to determine how strong the economy is, and it's connected to the debt rating and the finance market and banking and all that stuff. But the workers are a large part. Consumer spending to unemployment, the labor force participation rate. You also hear labor force participation rate is really the how many people are actively looking for jobs, because you get some people that get discouraged and then they just disconnect and they're no longer part of the body of people looking for jobs when they do the unemployment rate calculation. But with this article, it was talking about how the lack of productivity, the wages are going up, but the actual productivity of each worker is going down. Now that happens for a multitude of reasons, but you know, it points to some of it being like it's on the worker, demanding more money, demanding less work, the laziness that may kick in, technology that kicked in, and it spoke about the pandemic, right? The recent pandemic, and how allowing people to work from home, you know, again, one of the things that I mentioned, the truths about entrepreneurship, if you remember, one of them that I mentioned was the worker gets the benefit of the doubt, right? I think it was the last one. Employees are given the benefit of the doubt in politics and in the community. So you hear people talk about, well, let them work from home. There's the technology, the whole nine. It really is theory. It sounds good and looks good on paper. But what in reality happens, and it's like this, is this kind of belief in the workplace that, you know, like, let me break this down for a second, because it's really like hits close to home. When people on a job, they look at the building, they look at the lights, they look at the computers, they look at all that stuff, and it's almost like they think it's like it's just a staple. It's just here, just automatic. Like they people who do not invest in anything or even business are very subjective in their view, very myopic in their view, where they understand the struggle as an individual, right? The politicians talk to the individual. Struggle, you need more wages, you know, they have all these talking points, the cliche, you know, a livable wage, you know, they say all this stuff. So the individual understands how finances can be tight. But when they view a business or look at a business, it's like this apathetic view towards it, almost like the business got it. People just think a business got it, right? I mean, you would hear, and I've experienced it, where you have, there's a lot of money has been spent with my businesses, a lot of money to get a lot of things put in place. I have a lot of technology, you know, a lot of these technology over the years, you've seen them go to subscriptions. You can't just buy stuff anymore. It's like they want to stay in your pocket, right? So you experience all this, and then you just hear a worker say, oh, we need this, or we need to have this, whether it be software or new computers, and you're just like, it's so easy for them to just say that in your business, because there's no real connection to the idea that if you're not doing what you're supposed to do so that there can be productivity and output, it's a problem for the business. And in many cases, you have, you know, individuals who just who work but make a lot of mistakes, or they're not really on point. And then if the business is doing well, they're gritty. They expect that they should have a piece of the pie. But if the business isn't doing well, they don't feel they should have a piece of the loss, which they shouldn't, right? They're workers. That's not what they signed up for. But in many cases, they also don't do what they're signed up for, right? So you hear me talk about the operations manual. Like, the operations manual it's broken down in, like, you know, different chapters, breaking down, you know, all the rules and the steps, how to file complaints, how to from employee stuff to operational stuff to marketing to emergency cases. This is a book that you would put together if you worked on a company, and majority of people have worked for companies versus starting them. It's very rare you'll see someone who just never worked for a company, so didn't understand. If you work for a large corporation or government, you would have had one of these books that taught you these things. And you know, you always hear me say, it's crazy how people understand that, you know, you need to go to school, go to college, get a degree to get a good job. But to create jobs, people don't go anywhere. So if they're creating a business and creating jobs, they don't seek this training again, or help. Again, that's why I started Urban Business Institute. Those companies that I started were in response to what I was experiencing. So I did the same thing. So I don't want you to think I'm holier than thou and I'm talking down to everyone. Don't cancel me. We just started, so we don't need to be canceled already. But I went into business. I couldn't find the resources that spoke to me, to speak to the black entrepreneurial experience. There was a lot of broad stuff, mainstream stuff that didn't quite fit. And I went out and I lost money and I tried to figure it out. And, you know, I went through the moments of, you know, should I retreat? Because I left a very high paying job, almost a 6-figure job. As an engineer, should I go back? The benefits, the everything. There's no real breakdown. You could go to college. That's not the real breakdown. You go to college, and I taught college for 8 years. They don't call me professor because it's a joke. When you're there, the case studies and stuff are always of successful businesses or large businesses that failed. It's not real small business case studies. They're talking about Home Depot and JP Morgan Chase and these larger things, or larger scandals, or, you know, billion-dollar companies, because it's fashionably interesting to discuss those things. But you're not really gonna get what you need out of it when it comes to small business, because when you start a business, you may only have enough money for payroll, taxes, or rent. And which one do you pay? Which one do you pay? They're not talking to you about that. So which one do you sit back and pay out of the lease, payroll, and taxes? I'm going to leave that open-ended. I'm not even going to give you the answer, because those are the types of things we discuss at Urban Business Institute. Very, very specific things on, okay, how do you make that decision on what you should pay, on what you should, what other tools they have to satisfy or stretch your money, or how do you make additional money out of one product, one company, one business. There's so many other things that that needed to discuss. So in this article, it talks about breaking down the numbers. U.S. productivity plunged 2.7% in the first quarter of this year, meaning 2023, compared to last year. That's a 0.9% year-over-year drop. Concurrently, quarter-over-quarter, output grew slightly, 0.2%, and hours grew 3%. So it's a disparity of 2.7%. The hours are growing, but the output isn't. And if you talk to the worker, you talk to the politician, they're overworked. The workers are overworked and stuff, because it really sounds cool and it sounds good for votes. But when you get into business, you really start to realize, like, what's just talking, what's just bumping your gums, what's just gas, and what's real and what's really important in business. So I did want to go in, because we did get a question that came in about the minimum wage, because I did mention that one of the issues between having a higher minimum, like companies having the black business having the same minimum wage as billion-dollar corporations. Here's the thing. So they said, well, why wouldn't someone just go work for who has the higher minimum wage? So if we force billion-dollar companies to have a $20 minimum wage, but the smaller business, their minimum wage can be 15, black business can be 12 or 13, why wouldn't that person go to work for the larger corporation? I just kind of broke it down, but let me give it to you why. Then those people would not get those jobs. You're talking about people, the company isn't, because it has a minimum wage, means that they take anybody. You may not be worth that minimum wage. And if you're not worth that minimum wage, then you wouldn't get the job. They wouldn't hire you. So we're talking about people who are then relegated to unemployment or part-time jobs. These are people that can get employment at a company who their skills match their minimum wage. So because you got to really look at it like this. You got immigrants who may have recently got naturalized, hardly speak English. They're owed the minimum wage. You got convicted felons. They're owed the minimum wage. But then you got people who graduated high school. They just didn't go to college. They also would be minimum wage workers. If those three people showed up at that billion-dollar corporation where the minimum wage is $20, the corporation is going to pick the best out of those three. And typically, it's going to be individuals who, the person who graduated high school, born and raised here, speak fluent English, doesn't have a criminal background, that's the person that may get chosen. So now you got the immigrants that are being paid under the table, and they're not able to get benefits, employment benefits, tax returns, that kind of stuff, because they're being paid under the table, so no taxes are being paid for them. And then you got convicted felons who, again, are going to do one or two things. They're going to be paid under the table, they're going to stay unemployed, or they're going to recidivate. They're going to continue to go back to prison because they're going to do illegal stuff. They may start a business or become an entrepreneur at minimum if they have the wherewithal, but typically that wouldn't be their case. So you have a body of people who remains unemployable just because of that as well. Then you got some people who would be willing to work, because I've seen that as well. You got people who are willing to work at a black company for whether charity purposes, they see the vision, they want it to help it grow, but that black business cannot even afford to pay someone minimum wage. So that person wants to work there, but if they can't get paid on the table and get a W-2, they won't get the job. The black business won't give it to them. They will probably continue to employ their family and friends who may not be as equipped, or not equipped. When we talk about family and friends, how they work as well for the business is going to be a little different. So now you find that to be a problem, right? Because now you really can't reach out to the workforce because you can't afford it. So there's a lot of little things in there that creates issues when it comes to working. So I want you guys to understand. So there's a lot of talk about raising the minimum wage, right? And politicians they get votes because of this, right? We're gonna raise the minimum wage and we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. But in economics, like I said earlier in the beginning, it is not about emotions. So we can emotionally tell the people just to get our votes and say, hey, we're gonna raise the minimum wage and get you hired. But when those people minimum wage get raised, you're gonna lose workers because the company still needs a return on the money. So let me explain to you something. Workers are resources. They're human resources, but they're resources. An employee is a worker of a company. I mean, a resource at a company, just like the electricity, just like the Wi-Fi, just like the computers. They are a resource as well. And they're just a human resource. So you have to have a human resource department, just like you have an IT department for those resources, right? But the human resource, and you have the finance department, because that's a resource as well, the money, the cash flow, the credit. The human resources is a lot more tricky. Why? Because your workers have their resources, but they're resources of emotions. They're resources that can leave. They're resources that can talk back. They're resources that can strike. They're resources that can give you a hard time, right? That's the difference. So in managing that, like I said, getting to stage 3 of the business journey is difficult. You definitely got to get hats off to any company that gets you to stage 3. Why many businesses or why many entrepreneurs decide to get franchises? They decide to get franchises because stuff is in place. There's like I said, your operations manual, your policy book. These franchises typically have them, and entrepreneurs often are like, I just want to get my money back. I just want to be, a successful business person. I don't want to recreate the wheel. I don't want to start from scratch. Well, I was one of those people that started from scratch. And when you start from scratch, of course, there's a lot more you learn, a lot sharper you become. But it often takes a longer time for you to get profitability. The thing is with franchises, you're a glorified employee, to be honest, because there's only so much wiggle room you have with creativity, rules, and the direction you want to take your franchise, because they're going to dictate prices. They're going to dictate down to color, your menu that you can have, all these different things. So you're picking, right? Anything worth having is hard. Anything easy to have is the low-hanging fruit. The lowest hanging fruit has the most touches to it. It has the most bacteria. It's easier to consume because it's a lower hanging fruit. So talking about relationship in business. Now, I don't want you guys out there, my entrepreneurs, I don't want you guys to be out here feeling like employees are evil, because they're not. I have some really good ones. What I'm doing is preparing you for both sides, right? You have the worker that is really, really good and committed. Some of them will buy into your vision, and some of them will be around for a very long time. I have people working for me over 10 years, and they bought into the vision and they grew with me. Even when times were lean on payroll or whatever, they grew with me. And you have individuals that I think I have the record numbers. Someone didn't even make it a whole day working for me. That is the differences on the spectrum when it comes to workers. You gotta go in with understanding all sides of it. I remember before I got into business, and I told my mother I was going to get into business, and she told me, she said, the toughest part of running a business, because she has siblings that runs businesses, she said, the toughest part of running a business is the employees. And I snapped on her, because, you know, you're at that stage, you're in your 20s, your young 20s, you think you know everything, you're invincible, you're grown, but you're not wise, so you physically think, you know, you're confused, you're being lied to, your biology is lying to your brain, so you're thinking that you know everything. So I snapped on her. I'm like, nah, you crazy. All you gotta do is pay the people, be nice to the people, and they're gonna be with you, they're gonna ride with you. I had to eat crow, because that woman was correct. She was absolutely 1000% correct. That became one of the most difficult parts, because what I learned, again, they are a resource, but it's a movable resource. So you gotta make sure that you're and there's stages to employees too. There's 6 different stages, again, that I talk about in training for workers, because you got them that come in at different stages, and you got to make sure that the stage that they're in their career aligns with the stage you're at in your business journey. So you got some people, stage 6, the last stage, these are people who they're veterans in their career. They want benefits, they want security, they want good wages, a great compensation package. They don't want to have to think too much. They want everything pretty much working. And you see these people right now, they bounce from large corporation to large corporation as CEOs, as executive levels. So whether they're chief executive something, so they're whether chief information officer, chief marketing, whatever, these people go from there to there. You're not going to really see them going to work for Mark Zuckerberg in his garage for Facebook. The people that he grabbed at that point, they were younger people who saw the vision, people who would delay their compensation. Don't worry about that right now, because their payday is later. Jeff Bezos had the same situation. So those are like the stage 1s, and they go all the way up in between. These individuals, the stage that they're in and the needs that they have, your business needs to get those people at that level, whatever level your business is at. And again, you have to be realistic. Businesses fail for way more reasons than just capital and sales. Like I said, I mentioned earlier. So that's a symptom and not the cause of it. So let's get into a little bit of another topic when it comes to employees. You're gonna have employees quit because employees quit. Soak that up for a second. You're gonna have employees quit because employees quit. You're gonna have workers that come to the watering hole, and they're at the watering hole, and they just like this person. That gazelle like this llama, and they just became fast friends. And now, who they are to each other becomes more important than who they are to the business. And even though the watering hole is giving them those nutrients, their friendship is more nourishing to them than the nutrients of the watering hole. So you're gonna find like situations like that too. You know what I mean? If you let one go, you may lose 3 or 4. You know, and you know, when it comes to workers, it's like some people, even like with relationships, take a long time to take this step. You know, I tell people this is how you determine to let workers go. When the cost of keeping them is greater than the cost of letting them go, that's how you know it's time to cut ties. Because there's a cost for workers, right? And I mean, my staff even knows, I've told them, like, when it comes to small businesses, you have businesses that, you know, they look at the worker, and they're 2 sides of the fence. So owners, small business owners, they're looking at 2 things every day: expenses and revenue. And they look at their staff and say, what side of the fence are they on? I got some that's great for revenue, and I got some that's really just an expense. And they look at that and they kind of determine. But letting some people go they may be horrible, right? I've been faced with this as well. They may not be that good of a worker, but it's not so bad that you can afford to let them go. Whether it's just a warm body, whether they're doing a function that you cannot allow it to just cease, and then you're like, sometimes you're held a little bit hostage, which you don't want to be put in that position, because if you're in that position, the cost can exceed. They could start to get even snowball into it being a bigger and bigger problem. But you got to stop and say, look, what is the cost of letting this person go? I may have some clients complaining. I may have some issues that may take me a while to recover from. I may lose these other 2 workers, but keeping them, I still got complaints from clients, and now I got a virus being spread because these 2 workers are now becoming despondent or listless on the job. So now it's like, you know what? It's getting to be too much of a cost. I got to let this person go. That's, you know, one of the major things that you really got to look at. And to be quite honest, like, one of the things when it comes to workers is they often don't realize that they are customers too. It's like I said, it's kind of like a myopic view, right? So they would be a customer, they would be an employee. You got to manage this, right? A black entrepreneur, you got to manage this. They would be an employee, and they would be giving horrible customer service, but then they would expect to go somewhere and get great customer service, not realizing like they are also a customer who's also an employee. You're an employee somewhere, and you're complaining about the horrible service you're getting at that business, but then you're so tunnel vision that you don't realize that people are also complaining about you in the same way on your job. You want to be able to be late, or you want the business to accommodate that, but then if you go to a business to shop and they're not open and they're late, you mad. This is such an inconvenience. So again, black entrepreneurs, these are some of the things you got to be faced with and manage. You know, when it comes to the effects, we can talk about this really briefly, the effects of AI. You got to think about AI is coming. And the article in fortune.com, it was also speaking about how as the economy slows, the workforce, the control is going to shift back to companies, where workers are going to be really now trying to get jobs, because there's a lot of layoffs happening. I think recently, who was a company? Clubhouse just recently laid off 50% of its workforce. A company I didn't, well, let me don't give a review about it because no one asked my opinion, but they just recently laid off 50%. Now AI is coming. You know, AI is coming to the point where we kind of saw hints of it over the past 20 years. The teleprompter, right? They say, first you were calling companies and they would tell you press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it shifted to you can press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When that shift started to happen, that was AI already being introduced, where now it's voice recognition and automation and talk back and them being able to. So everyone got the what's the name of that movie? I don't remember the name of that movie. It was the movie where the guy fell in love with the no, it was the female. It was a thing. It was like a come on, guy. Her. That's it. Her. Nonsense, right? It says her. He fell in love with this thing because it was now talking to him and stroking his ego and all this stuff. I mean, we talking about jobs. We should really be thinking about relationships. Like, what's going to happen? Because these AI can't reproduce humans. So now we're going to have, that's a whole other situation. We're going to have, man, listen, y'all don't even understand. So the worker, again, you know, I talk about it. Like, we have to make sure that we're keeping ourselves in a good position. But the workers often putting themselves in a bad position just by not being a good worker. Like, you're quick to get the axe, not just because of another worker, because of technology that's being put in place. I often hear my staff even talking about, oh, we need this other technological thing and that tech, and I'll be sitting there saying, so you guys don't want your job because I'm gonna be paying for this other technological thing, and then it's gonna start doing more work for you, and you're gonna be doing less work, but you're not even realize you're cannibalizing yourself because you're gonna be thinking like, okay, I don't have to do that, and not realizing like you're gonna eventually move from the side of revenue to the side of expense because you're not really that needed. So how do we really engage and keep our clients engaged? Now, one of the main things that I say really work for relationships with business is ensuring they have the vision, right? So you as black entrepreneurs, make sure your team has their vision. Make sure that their position is as structured as possible. And one of the things that I have, in addition to an operations manual, I have playbooks for every department. So I have, I function as a real CEO. I have leaders. I have departments. Like, my businesses are well built out. Of course, they can always be more built out. I'm not a $1 billion business, and I'm not a billionaire. So there's more room that can be grown, that can be we can grow into, obviously. But we do have a lot of good tools in place, and a playbook is one of them. So a playbook is basically in the department. Anyone can be hired into the department, and everyone has to go through training. No one can work for me without training. I started hands-on training for my staff, breaking down all their positions. So you got to really have a real structure in place for the people that's coming to work for you. Like, their position, you got the job description, but how should they do it? What tools do they have? All these different mechanisms. And I went through and did training for every position and recorded it. Made it a training program with assessments, exams, everything. And that's also part of their onboarding. So no one can be hired permanently unless they finish the training program for their position. And once they finish their position, they also have a playbook. This playbook breaks down how they do their job, from how they access certain information, the steps of their jobs every day, some guidance, talking points to remember and keep in mind, how to give great customer service. All this stuff is also built out for them, that they also use. So they got to have vision. You got to remove the ambiguity as much as possible. You got to make sure that they have structure and purpose and know how their job connects to the bigger picture. Okay, one of the things that I'm interested in, and one of my goals, is to turn my staff into millionaires themselves. And there's a series of things we have to do in the business to grow it and get it to that level where I actually want my minimum wage to be close to 6 figures. So that's totally different. That's just my option. It's separate from someone who's starting off a business. I've been full-time entrepreneur going on 20 years next year. So I've went through the growing pains of getting to where I am. But that's one of my goals, to make sure that they're wealthy as well. So they connected to that and they see the roadmap to it. And those are some of the things that we're doing. So what type of impact do you want to have on the community? Remember, your business is a problem solver. It should not be a problem creator. So you're looking into the market and you're saying, what problem do I need to solve? Can I solve it beyond it being a hobby? Can I solve it profitably? Can I solve it generationally? Those are the things, those are the questions you got to answer when it comes to building your business. When you think about it, for example, a cup of coffee from Starbucks, right? So you guys buy these coffee from Starbucks, $7, $8, $9 every day from Starbucks. You did not just buy a cup of coffee. You also contributed to their operations, to their payroll, to their taxes, to their lease, to their utilities, to their insurance, to the coffee beans, to the cups, to the branding, to the lids. All of that was in this cup of coffee. Now, this cup of coffee, they know, okay, it's going to be $9, but in order for me to make this a large enterprise, or even it runs this one location, because they have it broken down per unit, right? Their locations are units. So in order for it to run this unit, how many cups of coffee do I need to move every day? Because of course it's not enough money in the $9 to take care of everything I said. But if they move 1,000 of these every day, $9,000 a day could be enough. Times 30, we're talking over $250,000 a month. That's enough to sustain this unit, give you guys free Wi-Fi, give you guys good service, because we can hire people who will get great benefits and all that stuff, and it'll be great. But when you have a local cafe, black owned, that can't sell for $9, you can only sell for $3 and $4, and you can't move enough cups of coffee every day, you're going to be in a pinch. And then who can you hire that's going to work? Again, I talk about the different stages. So who are you going to be able to hire, especially if they don't buy into your vision, especially if they're not very skilled? Who are you going to hire to now provide the people, the customers, with great customer service, the whole nine? It is a real thing. Being in business, just in theory, and just being in business is a real thing. Now, being a black entrepreneur, that's another thing. Don't just look at the sexy side. There's really another side to it, especially when you have to rely on a staff. Clear objectives that you want to have. Where's the business going? What's your responsibility to the community? What's your responsibility to your family? Why do you want to have money? Are you spiritually centered? Are you free from a lot of the emotional maybe baggage we may have in the community? Those are things as well. You know, if you got somebody, if you're a person that is not trusting, you don't just start a business and all of a sudden become trusting. You're just not going to be trusting. So now there's a degree of trust that you should have, and there's a degree of distrust that you should have. Making sure that you have that, you strike that balance, because if you are too distrusting, you may turn your staff off. If you're too excessive or too much of a micromanager, you may turn that staff off. If you're not patient, I know in the beginning of my entrepreneurial career, I would hire people and not have a lot of patience. Why? Because I took this money and I wasn't ever a person that put this plan together, went to the bank or got investors, and they were able to contribute to my business, and then I grew. No, I was pocket pimping. I was going into my own pocket and investing in business. I heavily started with real estate, flipping, rehabbing houses, really got my weight up that way, got my credit scores up that way, got equity out of the houses. And this was kind of like my approach for me to quit my job. And I talk about it in my book, Power Move. You can find that on devinrobinson.com if you're interested. Power Move, how to transition from employee to employer. I actually broke down my journey on how I actually did it. The steps that I took to get the money up, specific stuff I'm talking about, the tools that I use, the people that I work with, the businesses that I decided to go into. I was a stock trader from back then, day trader. I know a lot about stocks as well. So I did a lot of that stuff, got the weight up, and the next thing you know, I started opening brick and mortar locations for myself. So I wasn't a guy that went to the bank and got that kind of help. I was pocket pimping. I was pulling that money from my own pocket, making this thing happen. So I know how to bootstrap it. I know how to organically go from nothing to something over a period of time. I've lost a lot of money. I've lost a lot of investments. A lot of things have happened along the way, but it teaches you and it makes you grow and go to the next level. So again, for my black entrepreneurs that are really trying to strike the right balance between hiring people and, you know, putting them to work and stuff, you know, one of the main advice that I would give you, you know, you gotta also be personable but not personal, friendly but not friends, even with your staff and of course with your customers. I'll talk about that in the customer episode more, but you when you get too close to, you got to be careful with your emotions, again, like I said, because you may get too close to someone, and I'll tell you, your workers would often want to get very close to you because getting closer to you is more of a benefit for them than for you. They're gonna work because you're paying them, and for the most part they're gonna do what they're supposed to because it's a job that you're providing them, and if it's a good pay and a comfortable work environment, they really don't want to just lose that like that. But them coming to you or getting too close to you can create some precarious situation for yourself when it comes to them now needing to be disciplined or needing to be terminated. Your emotions can be wrapped up in that. So you also got to be careful and keep a safe distance where individuals can be critiqued and you dealt with them properly. Another thing that you want to make sure you have, performance evals. Performance evals are done with my company first 90 days when someone's hired, and then annually. So again, you're measuring, you're showing them, you know, how they're doing on the job, some of the things they can do better. Bottom line, when it comes to your business and managing your staff, you gotta have structure. The structure and all these different pieces must be in place. No one really wants to come to work in an ambiguous environment. It's not going to work out. If you think about it like a relationship, you don't want to date someone when the goalpost is always changing, when you really don't have structure with that person. They don't have any type of consistency, that type of stuff. You're not going to be able to function properly. So again, you want to have that. You want to have benefits for them. I have medical benefits. I have holidays that they take. But one of the other things that I have in place is they have a mental health day. So every month, members of my staff can put in to get a day off. It's paid. And they also have a partnership with a spa where they go to the spa and they get a 1-hour massage treatment, and it's also on the company. So that's something that's also in place, because we don't know what the personal lives are of people. We don't know what they're going through, and you know, self-care is something that they should do, but they maybe can't afford it. And many cases, if we say, well, here's an additional XYZ on your check to do your self-care, they may not do it because there's a constant need for something else. They may need to pay for something else. So this is a way that we make sure that they use that. And you know, some of the policies around it is you cannot take the day unless you go get the self-care. Then you could do whatever you want for the rest of the day. And if you don't do the self-care, it would not be a paid day off. So these are some of the things that I put in place to kind of build the relationship with workers. And the final thing that I have for them is access. So you want to, I mean, I can't break down all the pieces of it right here, right now, but I will tell you that access is tiered, right? So you have workers and you give them access at the level of their job, and then as they grow in their position, they get promoted. They're level 1 management, level 2 management. Then they get access to other things that they can do for you. So if someone's been around long enough that they're level 2 management, then they get deeper access into things that they can maneuver, whether it's in the CRM system, you know, that kind of stuff. When you're managing your staff or when you're dealing with your workers, one of the things that you need to make sure you're doing in your business is you manage your business for the bigger picture, the biggest picture. What do I mean by that? You want to manage your business based on where you're going. So the relationship part, like I said, your emotions part, you got to really be careful with that, right? So you don't say, I'll give you an example. If you have, let's just say you had you own a restaurant and you're going to hire a restaurant manager, right? That restaurant manager should have access to certain, whether software, portals, money, Dropbox, safe, whatever you're going to give them access to. But they get that access based on that position that they hold, not the person that they are, right? Now, based on the person, you may give a little bit of wiggle room as far as like how their work performance, but you really want to be black and white when it comes to the positions. You do not want to have a business where, well, Sherry was able to do this because she was cool and you give her that access, but she's your restaurant manager. Sherry leaves and now Marsha starts, and you realize like the things you were letting Sherry have access to and stuff was really because you trusted Sherry. But now Marsha is brand new and you realize like this isn't stuff I can really trust Marsha with, or vice versa. And then that creates confusion for you and confusion for them because the staff is now thinking Marsha should have certain access because Sherry had certain accesses, and now Marsha's talking to the staff like, well, why do I want to have that access? And staff loves to have access. They would love to have the keys to everything, not necessarily meaning that they should, but they would love to. So now Marsha's coming to you and she's disgruntled because she heard that Sherry had access to certain things, had the keys for your office or whatever, and really she should not have had that because of the position she held as a restaurant manager. This is how you should focus on building your entire organization. You should have things in place, and this is also part of your operations manual, the things that you should have in place, saying this manager can do this senior staff can do this entry-level staffer should be able to do this. And it doesn't matter because you have some of them that's been around for a long time that would seem to like press you and say, well, why shouldn't I be? But you gotta be able to listen. You can't do that. If you've been around for such a long time, then you would have been promoted and then have the access. You would have been at another level and then you would have had the access. If I have not promoted you, that means you're not really at that level or functioning at that level that I should give you access to these things or give you privileges that you shouldn't have. And that's the kind of things that a lot of entrepreneurs make, those mistakes where they're managing people based on the relationship and this person cool, that's cool or whatever, and then it's chaos in your business rather than having the structure, just basically saying, this is what an office manager does, and these are the keys that they have, and this is what this person should have, and only the manager can take the company car out of town, or these kind of things that you should have in place. So really and truly, having your employees on the team could be a great thing, but you also got to know the dark side, and you also got to know the things that you should prevent. And my final tip to you is really make decisions based on the worst case scenario. What do I mean by that? You always want to say, what is the worst that can happen with me making this decision? And if the worst isn't that bad, then you could take the chance and make that decision. But if the worst is too bad, you know not to make that decision and take that risk, simply because it can lead to your detriment. All right, so that's it for this week, folks. I'm Professor Devin Robinson. Of course, you need to make sure you share, like, subscribe to Black and in Business Media, to this page, our YouTube, our Instagram, our Facebook. Go to blackandinbusiness.com. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. You can follow me, Professor Devin Robinson, on all social media platforms. And this is it. And as I said, make sure you outgrow your yesterday. See you next time.